Thanks, Nathan. And welcome to this overview of ChemADVISOR's EHS Authoring Tool. For those of you not familiar with ChemADVISOR, since we were founded in 1986, our goal has been to be an indispensable source of EHS&T information, both to our customers and business partners. We accomplish this in a number of ways with our services and products. Services such as global product registration, market readiness assessments, SDS authoring, and of course our training courses. Our cornerstone product is the LOLI database with over 5,100 regulatory lists covering more than 115 countries. LOLI can be accessed in a number of ways, including a fully hosted cloud version. Then we have our transportation and pure substance databases. And if you need to do an occasional lookup for information on a chemical, there's ChemADVISOR Online. The GCRR provides chemical regulatory requirement summaries for today's largest and most important economies to help you plan and support product activities around the world. And finally, there's the EHS Authoring Tool. This is the latest generation of ChemADVISOR's authoring systems, created by SDS authors for SDS authors. So whether your needs are for a product line sold in a single country or for many product lines shipped around the world, the EHS Authoring Tool has the data, features, and flexibility that you'll require to meet your global needs. Let's start by taking a look at the data that drives this system. There's so many types of data required when creating an SDS or related document, so we're pleased to include both ChemADVISOR's LOLI regulatory database and the transportation database as part of the system. This gives you an enormous amount of data already at your fingertips when you first begin using EHS-AT. Again, the LOLI database is a collection of regulatory and advisory information on chemical substances covering health, safety, environmental, phys-chem data, toxicity, and ecotox, amongst other data. In addition to the regulatory data found in LOLI, EHS-AT also includes the transportation database, providing you proper shipping names, packing groups, and other information to help you properly classify your product for transportation around the world. So let's move on to some of the features of the system. In addition to the LOLI and transportation databases, EHS-AT also includes templates to help you produce compliant SDSs and labels, both for the US and the EU. Other templates are also available to help you do business around the world. In addition, you can create and modify your own templates so you don't have to wait for outside help with this system. Let's enter the system and look at the inbox for a typical user. You'll see the documents currently assigned to this user that they can select to work from. And when you select one of the items, you'll see the related document history appear to the right. This includes attachments. Say you may have the formulation information on the product or perhaps a previous version of the document. You'd find that here. And there's also an activity record that's showing you the chronological dates of when the document's been worked on. So you have a good document history here. So let's open that record we've selected and move on to the SDS editor. This provides you the functionality to create and edit documents. The form here, as you see, is divided into the left-hand tree that's highlighted here, and then the right side, there's the panel. The tree contains data that you'll need for whatever combination of the templates that you've decided to work on for this product. So you can work for one to many at the same time. So everything's all in one place. So let's go ahead and open up out of that tree the composition editor. And this is where you're going to do much of the work to create a document. Will all be done in this screen and the related screens behind it. We've designed this section to allow you to enter and control the composition information in a number of ways. Confidential versus non-confidential components, adding mixtures within mixtures, or if you need to appropriately account for products where the composition you started with does not actually represent the final composition you need on the SDS. So perhaps some of your components reacted out in the beginning, but this lets you have all of that composition at least captured here, and then you have options on how you want that data to then appear on the document. So when you enter a CAS number here on the Details tab, EHS-AT automatically associates the chemical name from LOLI, but the system also easily handles components that may not have CAS numbers. Perhaps it's a mixture or a substance that you don't have a CAS number for. As the system accepts that component, you'll notice there's a percentage counter at the top of that panel on the left-hand side, and that's tracking the total percentage we've entered. There are no issues with totals that are over or under 100%. This is just a really easy visual way for you to see that total as you add things or subtract things out of the composition. Now let's move over to the Composition Roll-Up tab. This is where you're going to make decisions on how you want those components that you entered on the Details tab to actually be used within the system. So for classification rules, for print rules that are going to allow how these components actually appear on the document, that type of thing. You'll see that the data that we've entered on the Details tab is here. Plus you're going to have a number of new options, including one here to select an alternative name for the component. This can be from the synonyms and translated names found in LOLI. That's the list you see here, but you can also enter a name of your own choosing. You can also modify how the component percentages are displayed on the sheet if you want ranges or less than or greater than values here. So you'd have, the exact actual information still there on the screen under the actual column, but here is really showing you just how you can have it displayed on the document. And next is the restriction level. Now here you're going to have 4 options. The first one is the non-confidential option. This is where the component data that you see here, this is exactly how it's going to be displayed on the SDS, and the data on this component will also be included in the calculations that you'll be doing, such as classification calculations. Now the next option is confidential, and this is going to allow you to choose from a number of options. For example here, for your display CAS name, you can take it and decide that this really needs to be held as a trade secret, or it's proprietary or confidential, or perhaps, as we discussed before, it could just be a mixture, so the CAS number doesn't really apply. You also here can also choose to modify the display name. Now you also have an option of suppressing a component, and this is where you designate that the component should not appear on the document, nor should it be used in any of the calculations. This may be something perhaps as I touched on before, where you have composition, where you have components used in the beginning, but not all of them actually make it to the end product. So perhaps you just want to be able to account for something that maybe was completely reacted out, but it certainly was part of the document, or certainly was part of the product as it was being created. Or this may be an option for you if you just want to see the impact of a particular component in one of your products. You can put it in and let it come through as non-confidential, and then you can run it again as suppressed and perhaps see what kinds of differences you may see as far as classifications go. And finally, there's the do not display in CAS. Do not display in the composition section. Now this keeps a component from being displayed in section 3 in the composition table, but it does allow the substance data to be displayed in sections and other sections of the sheet, such as section 8, section 11, 15, and other sections where you may actually have chemical data coming through for that specific substance. Now let's move on to the LOLI data for those components. So since you have LOLI data that comes through, we want to see how you can actually see the data. Now you can review this individually by selecting the details item here that I'm showing on the right-hand side of the screen for each component. And just to reiterate, the component-specific details are pulled in from LOLI, and the data, again, includes tox data, ecotox, phys-chem properties for the individual CAS-identified substances. Now, you also have options with LOLI for generic links and for related CAS numbers, and I'll show you on the next screen how you can select that. But that's information that you can bring in. Perhaps if you had something like a copper compound, you may have specific data for that compound that's available in LOLI that's linked to the CAS number. But there's also generic copper compound information, and this gives you the opportunity to decide whether or not you want that data included or not. The database is also updated weekly, and we do have features that allow you to identify the impact of those regulatory updates. So as I mentioned, here's where you're going to be able to go in and pull in information either from a related CAS number or from generic data, so the links information that you can pull in. Now for this example, we're just going to pull in the LOLI data, so we're not going to click anything there. But we will go up here and click the Get Details button. So what you'll see is right now in that bottom portion of the screen, there's nothing coming through at this point because we haven't added anything individually and nothing has come through from LOLI. But when we click, now we have data coming through from LOLI, and you'll see it appears, various sections that we have broken out here. For example, here we go. We have different pieces broken out, including where we are right now, of course, for physical properties coming through, as well as toxicity data for the component, again from LOLI. And we also include the published GHS classifications. Now you're going to notice here that we've created a hierarchy based upon those published classifications to provide suggestions for countries like the US who don't self-classify. So the information you see here in the column under the US is data, and it's clearly identified. The first ones you're going to see are coming through from the Taiwan classification list. But these are only suggestions for the U.S. And for any other countries that don't have their own list. But this gives you, a place to start looking if you don't have a lot of data. This gives you an idea of how your substance, at least, is being classified by countries that have chosen to do these self-classifications. Now, you can keep them or you can override them. It's entirely up to the user. Now, we also include chemical inventories in here, and exposure limits amongst other data. So let's go back to the composition editor here and note at the top of the window there's a button called Product Properties. So everything we've done up to this point has been component data. Now we're going to start looking at data for the product as a whole. So this may be test data that you have, this may be information that you have from other sources that you want to make sure is associated with your product as a whole. Now we have the same data options here as we did for the component details, but as you see, this information is not coming, in most cases directly from LOLI because this is a product that is a mixture of components. So you'll notice that we have things here when we're putting in data that it shows that it's overridden. So the system didn't provide the data to you. That's why you're getting something that's telling you that it's overridden. So this is a good way for you to know that, oh, I did or someone else provided this data. It did not come from the system itself. And again, the same type of product level data that you can enter here as you can anywhere else. Now this also brings into play the transportation information, and of course makes a lot more sense to look at it here under product details since you're classifying for the product as a whole. And this is information that again comes in from ChemADVISOR's transportation database. And so here, if you'll simply enter the UN number that you have for your product, and then as we did with the LOLI data, you're going to click that Get Details button again. And we're going to bring the data in, and then the system's going to bring in the information for the data that's associated with that UN number. So you have your transportation classification here. You can choose to, again, accept this. You may know something that's different for your product that's more specific that you need to, make some alterations, but it's certainly up to you, but this gives you a good place to start. Now we're going to move on to the rules associated with the EHS-AT system. Now it's a very powerful part of the system, allowing you to have much of the data that you need populate with many sections of the document, giving you a very efficient and repeatable way of creating documents. Now there are two types of rules in the system. We have data rules, and those are ones that are going to identify and retrieve information to populate subsection fields in the system. Now typically this is component data that is, if you will, looked up in LOLI. So the information that we were seeing back earlier for the components, that type of data that's coming in from LOLI, the reason it's doing that is because of the data rules that's bringing that in. So things like, again, occupational exposure limits or the published GHS classifications that we looked at. But now the data rules also evaluate information that helps calculate additional results. For example, that's where calculating specific product level GHS classifications would come in. That's another way that the data rules are used. There are also print rules, and those are going to be the rules that actually format and organize information for output on the various templates. So you've gathered all this information together for your product, and now you want to create an OSHA GHS document and a UN, let's say an EU CLP document, and perhaps labels for both of those. Well, the print rules are the rules that are going to organize that data and make sure that the data that you need on the OSHA GHS document is all the data that you need there. You don't have data coming in that's appropriate for other templates. Now the rules we have can be global, and they're applied across all the templates, or they're customer specific, and this is something that's very user defined, but perhaps you have rules that you want to apply that are specific to perhaps a business unit or a particular product line. You have options for that. Now, here you're going to see examples of some of the rules that are present. Again, some of these are the lookup type rules based on the component information from the regulatory database, but the GHS selected rules here on the right populate phrase text in section 2 based on the classification rule results. So this is a section where, based on the results you have for a particular classification, it's now going to go and pull in appropriate phrases for you. Not only phrases, but also symbols. So you'll get your pictograms, signal words, the hazard and precautionary phrases that are required for each of the products there that you've classified. And here's a pretty good list showing you the GHS classification rules, at least the core set that you see here in front of you. And again, the rule output is going to be specific to a country, how each country has implemented it, and then dropping or adding hazard categories as appropriate, depending on how each country has actually adopted GHS. Now you also have an option to edit the rules. This is the rules editor. This in particular view, we're showing a flammable GHS for a flammable liquid. And this is just showing the types of variables and data types that are considered along the way as you're actually doing the classification. Once the rules editor functionality is really learned and understood, you can write your own rules or update a rule or remove parts of rules if you don't think they're appropriate anymore. Certainly that's something that you as a user are going to be able to do. And so once you've written your rules or you're using the ones that we've provided, let's talk about running the rules. Now you have an option here to run all the rules that are out there. You can run a selected set of rules. And one thing you'll notice that the rules turn green to let you know that they've actually succeeded in running. You may have a rule that may not run, and you would have a different highlighted color. It would be in that kind of red color to let you know that there's something that you need to go look at. And so once they have completed, let's just take a quick look to see in our document preview, the WYSIWYG view, so what you see is what you get. So using that, what you see on the at this point is, we haven't run the rule here in section 2, but let's take a look at what happens once you've run it. So after you've run it, this is the type of result you're going to see after running those rules. So at this point, you are seeing the classification with the appropriate symbols. The pictograms are coming through, the signal word, hazard statements, etc. So it's quite a difference, when you compare the two before you run the rules and after you run the rules. And EHS-AT also allows you an option of viewing the rules side by side. In this case, it's probably not as necessary to see the highlighting, but it is something, especially if you're kind of running some changes where you might actually greatly benefit from the fact that, oh, I've changed something, something's been added. And as you see, if something's been deleted, you would have red highlighting, and something new would give you the green highlighting if it had been inserted from the previous time, or if it's just simply been changed, which is what we're showing for these. So now let's take a look at phrase functionality. So sections such as firefighting, first aid, handling and storage actually allow you to select phrases, as opposed to what you were seeing there with the classification rules that were bringing in the appropriate phrases based on the classifications the classifications results you had. So what we have is a predefined phrase set that's provided, and you of course can add your own phrases. You can scroll through the phrases or search by keyword, and then select one of the phrases or more to add to the bottom section here. So you have the phrase set at the top, the selected phrases below. And you can also reference phrases between documents. Now, this is a very powerful tool. Perhaps you have a product line that has very similar composition, so you know that you want to be able to associate all of those sections, perhaps firefighting, handling, and first aid, all need to be the same. Well, instead of having to go in and select all of those phrases over and over, you can simply associate the sections of subsequent documents once you've done your first document for that set, and let those just be associated here through the referencing. EHS-AT is offered with a phrase library, as I mentioned, and it's an English language one, but there are also other language sets available. And when English is the selected languages, as you see all of the here under the little green radio buttons, all of those are indicating that indeed all of those phrases are available in English. And in the bottom, you'll see, of course, that all the phrases are available in English as well, just by the fact that they're all the text is given in green. Now let's see what happens when we change both the drop downs to display a Japanese translation. On the top half of the screen, you're going to see the phrase library. It stays in English as you're reading it, but now you're going to notice that a few of the phrases now have these gray radio buttons, indicating that that phrase is not available in the target language, so in this case, Japanese. Now, of course, on the bottom half of the screen, it's even more of a visual clue when you see that the phrase, that top phrase there, the if inhaled one, is still in English while the other ones are in green and in Japanese. It makes it very easy for you to see what might be a missing phrase. Now, you can certainly add phrases at this point, both in any language, so adding translations that you acquire is not an issue with the system. As for document control, in EHS-AT, your documents are either in a draft or finalized state. Drafts are the ones we saw earlier through the inbox, and when completed, you simply move your document to the finalized repository. If you need to make a change, you simply check the document back out. You'll also be versioning your documents. Minor versioning is the default, and this allows you as the user to decide if you've made a change that might merit a major revision. And finally, you can publish the documents in various formats, including Word, PDF, and HTML. I'd like to thank you for joining us today for this presentation of ChemADVISOR's EHS Authoring Tool. If you'd like further information or if you'd like to schedule a personalized demo, please contact us here at info@chemadvisor.com. Thank you very much.